Hey everyone, welcome to Moving Matt. We do all things cameras with a dash of vlogs and a little bit of travel. And today I'm going to give you my top 5 most anticipated cameras of 2022. So undoubtedly this is a completely subjective list. Also with the chip shortages, it's kind of impossible to tell exactly which cameras are coming in 2022, but I do feel like there's at least enough rumors and even some confirmation to assume that at least most of these cameras will actually be coming in 2022. But without further ado, here is my list. Starting in at number 5 is the Sony A9 III. So this particular camera actually may be one of the ones that doesn't make it out in 2022. There's kind of a back and forth on whether or not people think that the A1 is going to be a complete replacement for the 9 series, but there has been quite a few rumors going around as of recently, and it just seems like most people think that the A9 III is going to happen. The reason I'm excited about this camera is, well, I'm always kind of excited about the newest and greatest tech. Now it will be interesting to see how Sony approaches the A9 now that they have the A1 out. Will they keep the A1 the best of the best at everything, or will they allow the A9 to surpass it in some ways? Personally, I think that the A9 Mark III is going to have a smaller megapixel count, obviously, than the A1. I don't think it's going to be focusing much on video whatsoever, but I do think that they're going to allow it to be somewhat faster than the A1. I'm thinking somewhere around 40 frames per second raw, but of course that is just a complete guess at this time. But if I had to guess, this is going to be the fastest Sony camera that they've ever made. Now coming in at number 4 is sticking with Sony, and a camera that I think is even more likely to come, and that is the Sony A7R Mark V. There's many reasons this camera has me intrigued. I'm curious if Sony is going to go with an even higher megapixel sensor, or if they're going to keep the same great sensor, but they're going to focus more in on the speed, adding the new menus, adding the new autofocus, and doing a few different things that they can do by speeding up the hardware with the new chips and also the new software. I would also expect it to have a similar body to the A7 IV, meaning that it will have the different dials that the A7 IV does have. But overall, I see it having a very similar design to all the different Sony cameras that's came out recently, especially considering the A7R IV is basically where they changed the body style, made it slightly bigger and better feeling in the hand.
That's what she said.
I do think this is going to come with that very high-end EVF that was first seen in the A7S III and then also followed up in with the A1. It really makes sense for a high-resolution camera. Also, since the A7R4A is out now and it uses that higher-end screen, I suspect that this will have a higher-end screen, and finally Sony will have a higher-end screen in one of their newer cameras. Even though I'm primarily a video shooter at this time, I'm definitely still excited to see what this camera has to offer. But speaking of being a primarily video shooter, my next camera coming in at number 3 is the Canon EOS R5C. So if you're not familiar, the R5C is essentially going to be a video-centric R5 that will have probably a slightly different body because it's going to be adding a fan. Also, it's supposed to have the digital hot shoe that was first found in the R3, meaning that you're going to be able to hook up different accessories, including XLR input for audio. I'm guessing they're going to be getting rid of all the record limits in this camera, and there's even talks of them adding C-Log 2, meaning that it's going to be an even higher end cinema style camera and allows you to get the highest dynamic range you're going to be able to get from this sensor. So the reason I'm so excited for this camera is I think that the R5 had the potential to be something incredibly special. The overheating kind of overshadowed what is already a pretty great camera. I think with some of the later firmware updates, it definitely helped it out a lot. And I really think that it is one of the best priced cameras and maybe even the best hybrid camera on the market. So it would be really cool to see what the R5C has. It will be cool to see what the R5C. It will be really cool to see what the R5C has to offer, especially since they're supposed to be keeping all the same photo specs as the R5. This could quite possibly be the perfect hybrid camera. The only really big question we have left is how much will Canon charge for this camera? Will they charge a huge premium and maybe put it closer to $5,000, or is it going to be closer to the $4,000 mark? I definitely know there's going to be a premium on it. The question is how much, but supposedly we will not have long to wait because Canon rumors has a CR3 saying that it's going to be coming out mid-January, or at least it will be announced mid-January. So that is super cool news. I'm very interested to see how this camera plays out, and that's why it makes my number 3 spot. Coming in at number 2 is the Fujifilm X-H2. The reason I'm so excited to hear more about this camera is that Fujifilm seems to be the only camera company that is really focusing in on the APS-C sensor size. I think for a long time they've been ahead of the spec ball game in the APS-C line. They were the first to add 10-bit 4K 60 in their cameras, and that came out in the X-T3. And I think that was in 2018, if I'm not mistaken. So they've had that in there for a long time. How far will they take the specs? Will this have 8K? And also, will they fix some of the glaring problems that's really been holding them back? Mainly the IBIS and the autofocus. I feel if they can get those two things in order, they will be light years ahead of anything that Sony or Canon has released in the APS-C sensor size. So I'm excited for this camera, and I really hope it sends Fujifilm to the next level. So that brings me to my number 1 pick, and that is the Canon EOS R1. So for a while, I wasn't sure if the Canon EOS R1 was even for sure coming in 2022, but I'm starting to believe that it is going to be coming, and I'm very interested to see what is the flagship of flagships that Canon has to offer. Personally, I still kind of stick to the conspiracy theory that the R3 was originally going to be the R1, but when they heard about the Sony Alpha 1 and what the Nikon Z9 have in store, they kind of scrapped that idea and said, oh, let's just put a 3 here, and we're saying that the R1 is going to be better, and we are going to try to catch up. But I would love to be wrong, and I would love to see Canon come out and really just blow the industry away, kind of like they did with the R5, or at least in the initial announcement of the R5. And knowing that this is going to be their professional flagship camera, I do not think that they're going to be putting anything in the spec sheets that is not actually going to translate over. People have thought about maybe a global shutter or something crazy like that, or insane stops to dynamic range. Personally, I do not see a global shutter being a part of it, but I do think this will be super fast camera. It's definitely going to offer 8K. I suspect it will maybe even be faster than the Sony Alpha 1 and the Nikon Z9, but I guess only time will tell. But this camera definitely has mine and others' attention, so it'll be really cool to see if they can actually live up to the hype. But that is just my list. Drop in the comment section below and give me your list. Is it completely different than mine? Does it match up a little bit? Drop in the comment section below and let me know. If you've liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Until next time, peace.